And welcome back, everybody, to the Podcaster Nation. I said welcome back because I know you were just here listening to some of our stuff and you wanted to come back and get a whole bunch more. Well, you know what? We do have some more for you today. This is the podcast that is about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. And today, once again, our special guest is a podcaster. It's me. That's right. I'm the podcaster. I'm our special guest another time. This is part two of our three-part series in terms of being a better podcaster. Sometimes the simplest things make the biggest difference. So I hope that you will find that some of the things that we're bringing up in yesterday's podcast and today's podcast. I hope that you'll pick some of these out. Maybe it's a good refresher. Maybe you'll go, yeah, I've always kind of done that, or never really thought about it that way. It's not intended to be revolutionary, just intended to be a good reminder. And we have a lot of fantastic podcasters on here who are listening to stuff. So would love to hear your comments. Would love to hear your reminders, tips and tricks that you do, things that you subscribe to. Would love to hear it. So please leave it in the comments and, DM me with any ideas for future Be a Better Podcaster episodes. Would love it. This is, in fact, the place where the rising tide raises all ships. So let's rock and roll. Today, we're talking about, in terms of being a better podcaster, we're talking about the pre and post interview. All right. Now, there's a million different schools of thought on the interview itself, and we'll be talking about that later. But the pre interview and the post interview are grossly underused. They are underutilized. There are a million things we can be doing in both of those segments. When you get someone on your Zoom or your Riverside or whatever it is you're using, uh, the pre-interview is what obviously takes place when they log in and you're able to say hi and you haven't hit the record button yet. Okay. So you're not live. You're not quote on air. Um, that's an incredibly important time. And what I want to do today is talk about that time and the time after the interview, and just go over a couple of little things. Maybe some of you guys will find this, interesting. I hope so. Um, Before we get into all of that, and before we even start talking about the pre-interview, I want to really, really strongly recommend to everybody do your research. Okay. A lot of us who are good talkers, who are good on our feet, we figure we can just sort of dive into the interview, talk to them for a minute or two, figure out what they want to do, and then just roll. And that's going to work sometimes, but it's not always going to come off very professional. It's not going to come off giving an air of confidence to the guests. It's not going to be, it's not going to give you extra credibility. So when you can do your research and you can walk into the interview and in the pre-interview, you have listened to their podcast episode or you've read their book. Ideally, you've read their book, but in most cases, you can look it up on Amazon. You can find an excerpt from the book. You can read the back of the book. You can skim through the book. There's all sorts of things you can do to at least get an idea of what the book's about, of what they're trying to accomplish with it, things like that. Have you gone to their website? It takes 2 seconds. Take a look on somebody's website, right? Look at the courses they're offering. Look at what they're featuring. Go to their social media. Look at what they're talking about. What are they posting about? Do they have any big events coming up? Maybe they're a keynote speaker in something that's happening, or maybe they have an online event that's coming up in a few weeks. Any of these things are very important to the interview because number one, they're important to your guest. And if they're important to your guest, then they should be important to you at that moment. The other thing is that when you show up in the pre-interview and you know these things, you have an instant credibility with the guest because they know that you're a serious podcaster. They know that even if this is a hobby for you, you take it seriously enough that you value their time and you respect their time and whatever their expertise is. So I want to make sure that I'm recommending as highly as possible that you do everything you can to do some research on these people before they come on the show. All right? Now, as we get into the pre-interview, that research is going to come back and help us out. Pre-interview, obviously, there's some ice breaking. Hey, where are you calling in from? How you doing? This is a great time to make sure you have the correct pronunciation of their name. I have made this mistake. I don't even know how I still make this mistake. It's one of the reasons why it's at the top of my list today. Also, double check, husbands and wives, partners. I made a huge mistake on a podcast here recently where it was Dr. and Mrs. and I knew that, but I did not realize that, excuse me, that the doctor's wife still went by her original last name. It was even there on the Zoom screen for me, which was really embarrassing. And, if I, after all the time I've been doing this and as many things as I've accomplished in this field, if I'm still doing this, then I need this reminder too. When that happened, boy, I tell you what, the next 10 interviews I did since that one, I have double checked names. I've looked at the Zoom login. I've, made sure about all of those things, front and center. So, let me, pause for a moment to take a sip of my preferred beverage over here. For some reason, the pipes aren't working this morning, guys. All right, let's just keep things rolling as we move forward. So double check the name, but you can do that during your introduction without having to say, okay, now the correct pronunciation of your name is. You can just do it casually, while you're introducing yourself, while you're talking about where you're from, while you're breaking the ice. Name pronunciation is a big deal. Also, double check what is their intro. You may look at them and say, oh, they're a podcast host, or oh, they're an author. And someone may come back and go, you know what? I'm a visionary. I'm a mother. I'm a father. Maybe that's more important to them. Maybe they're a pastor. Maybe they have some certification that you don't know about, even in your research. But when you double check the introduction and you say, hey, I have you down as a podcaster and an author, is that how you would like me to introduce you? Podcaster, author, Rory Paquette. They appreciate that. They appreciate the fact that you're checking. They appreciate the fact that you recognize that how they are introduced matters. And it's also an opportunity for them to maybe flex a little bit and say, yeah, actually, I'm this, this, and this too. And you know what? Let somebody. They're coming on your podcast to talk about themselves, to push whatever product it is or whatever story it is. Give them the time. Give them that respect. And double check these things. Find out how they like to be introduced. It goes a very, very long way. Okay. Then you're definitely going to want to, let's see, go over your contact info. This is a great time to say, listen, I know I'm going to ask you during the podcast so you can tell everybody, but I'm also going to have it in the show notes. I want to make sure I have it correct. I've got your website here or whatever it is. What information do you want to put out to the public? Not everybody wants their social media handles put out there. Some do, some don't. A lot do, but some just want their website put out there. Very often, I have people say, you know what? All of my stuff is available through my website. So just put the website out there. That way they'll click on the website and then they can go to any of my socials. They can go to my podcast. They can click on the link for my book. That's really where they want it to go. It's about them. The whole podcast is about them. They're your guest. So extend them that courtesy to say, what would you like to put out there to the general public as your contact information? Okay. That's a really good thing to do also. Um, let's see. We talked about doing your research. The podcaster in your research, it's the name of the podcast, a little bit about what the podcast is about. Like I said, listen to it if you can. What books do they have? What courses do they have? What speaking events? If they do have podcasts, if they do have books, get the links. If you can get the links yourself, grab them. Email them to yourself and you can store them there. and then you have it for later. That's a great way for you to also talk about, hey, in the show notes, we're going to put your contact information. We're also going to put in your links to your book and to your podcast. Don't ever feel like you're helping your competition here, folks. All right? We're podcasters. And for some reason, there are some folks out there who feel like we're each other's competition. Listen, I don't just listen to one podcast. Do you? So if you're interviewing someone who has a podcast, put their podcast link in the show notes. That gives you an opportunity to do a multitude of things. The first of which is you get to piggyback off of their listeners also, because people who like them and follow them are going to come to your episode in the first place. But then people who are finding out about this guest for the first time can then go to your show notes and click on their podcast and go check it out. That doesn't mean they're leaving yours. They found out about them on yours. They won't forget that. But it brings them to your show notes. Now, how many times do we all go to show notes? As podcasters, probably not that often. We click on the podcast, we listen, we move on. If you can get someone in your show notes, even if it's somebody else's podcast link, they're seeing everything else that you're advertising in your show notes as well. Your course, your features, your speaking engagements, all of those things. So again, rising tide raises all ships. This is a good way to go. Make sure that you put that in there. If they wrote a book, put the link in there. You can get it off Amazon in 2 seconds. Copy link, paste, done. Make sure it's in your show notes. All right. A big question is, why are they there? Whenever I have somebody on, I try and talk to them about, listen, you know, what is it you'd like to accomplish today? Or is there something in particular that you really want to make sure that we get out there? Something about your course, something about your book, a message that you're trying to convey. In a perfect world, what is it you want to get out of being on this podcast today? And when you actually bring that up to somebody in the pre-interview, it's amazing where they can go. I've had people go, the book is great and the podcast is great and all that, but I really want to get this message out. I really want this message to reach as many people as possible. I, wow, you just dictated how I'm going to do a lot today. You just changed where, I've been aiming, because I could have spent the whole podcast talking about your podcast and your book and your course. And what you really wanted to do was spend most of the time on your message. I never would have known that if I hadn't asked. And people who come on as guests don't always know that either. Now, on this show, I have podcasters come on. So it's easy to get spoiled over here because you folks that come on as guests, you're podcasters. You already know what it's like to sit in this seat, and you're experiencing what it's like to sit in the other seat. But your average guest that you bring onto your podcast isn't necessarily going to have any idea what it's like to host a podcast. All right. So make sure that you're talking to them about what is it that they want to accomplish. It's a very big deal to them. It's the reason they're there. So again, you're building credibility. You're showing them that this is all about them. They're going to appreciate that from the get-go. And it can, and almost always does, change the tone of the entire interview. When they know that you are serious, that you are credible, that you've done your homework, and that you're ready for them to be on. And then when they also know that you are presenting this to them and it's all about them, folks, they approach the whole thing in a much different way. And it's amazing how much more comfortable they are. It's amazing how much more much more appreciative they are of being on the show with you. Your response at the end is going to be fantastic. And here's a nice little thing too. They are much more apt to share it because of the way they feel from the beginning. As we move forward, another thing about the pre-interview. It's all about them. The podcast is all about them. A huge mistake that we make as podcasters is we have a guest on and they're here to tell their story or they're here to push their product or whatever it is because we've already found out what their purpose is, right? And every time they say anything, we interject our story or we interject our experience or we interject, our opinion. Folks, if you want to put out your stories and your opinions and, everything else, do a solo episode and put it all out there. And your listeners will love it and they'll hear it and you'll accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. When you do it during an interview, your interviewer is literally sitting there like, why am I here? If this is going to be all about you, why did you have me on? I have seen interviews like this. There was a long time ago, there was a very famous influencer, we'll say physical fitness, influencer, who had on her podcast a guy that I really, really like a lot and has actually become a friend of mine over the years, Eddie Pinero. And he's a great speaker. It's, Your World Within is his channel on YouTube. He's a motivational speaker, keynote guy. He's huge. Millions of people follow him. And she somehow managed to get this guy as a guest on her podcast. And I think he might have said 10 words through the whole episode because she made it all about her. And it was like she was trying to gain his approval or something. It was the worst thing I've heard in podcasting. Even recounting the story makes me just cringe. And I only tuned into that episode because I wanted to hear what Eddie Pinero had to say. And as a listener, I was like, what are you doing? Let him talk. Let him answer the question. There's an idea. So make sure that the podcast is all about them. Redirect. If you're thinking, oh, I have a story for this, great. Tell it next time. Tell it in your solo follow up episode that you're going to publish in a few days. Tell it on social media. Okay. But don't tell it at that moment in the podcast. It's all about them. That's huge. It's the biggest thing you can do for your guest. Okay. Um, Another thing, explain your process. Okay. Now, for those of you who have been on the air with me, who have come on to my shows, you've heard all this before. All right. But I will actually say, okay, and this is pretty much how I do it. Okay. Hey, let me give you a few, some broad strokes about how we do things here. I don't edit, so we just do a one run through. If the cat crawls on your head or we spill a drink or whatever, we just laugh about it. We power right through, and don't worry because when mistakes like that happen or things occur, our listeners they love to message me and kind of chide me about it. It's really fun. It's great for engagement, but it's also authentic, and that's what we do. You folks who have been on my podcast as guests have heard this line. You've heard me say this. I'm giving everybody the broad strokes. Okay. Now, listen, on the Podcaster Nation, for instance, I tell people about, the first half of the podcast is about you and your story. Second half of the podcast is about, podcaster stuff, right? Okay. About midway through, I'm going to ask my corny question. It's really simple, so I'll let you know what that is later. I let them know that's coming. Not a big deal, because my corny question is really simple. What do you love most about podcasting, and what do you hate the most about podcasting? Not something someone has to prepare for, right? So I let them know, though, that that's coming. Now, here's a little click. I always let them know that the way that I end the podcast, and this is what I would say it. Now, when we're finishing up and we're, wrapping things up to end the podcast, the last question that I ask is this. And for Podcaster Nation, the way that I end it is I say, hey, what's one piece of advice you can give to podcasters who are not quite where you are yet? I do that for multiple reasons. Okay. On my Power of Man podcast, I end it like this. I'm going to ask you a wrap up question, and that's how I end the podcast. I'm going to give you the floor for a moment or two. Excuse me. And I'm going to say, hey, is there anything that I missed? Is there anything that maybe we talked about? We need to drive home a little bit, or maybe a nugget or, some advice you leave behind that you want to give. And I'll give you the floor for a couple of moments to end out. Okay. Now, with both of those endings, I'm accomplishing two major, major things with my guest by talking about it right now. The first thing is I'm preparing them for that. So in the back of their minds, they're already working on, what am I going to say? Am I going to give advice or what am I going to do? Okay. I've made the mistake when I move to this question of hitting them with it at the end, and they sort of look at it and go, wow, I don't really know what else I would add. And that's on me because they weren't ready. So I give them that up front, that's how we're going to end, and that question is coming. They're able to prepare, and it makes for absolutely fabulous endings. Here's the other thing that I'm doing. I'm letting them know that when you hear that question, that means we're done. Okay? That doesn't mean we're going to talk for another hour and a half. So if you're trying to be a better podcaster, sometimes you have to rein in your guest a little bit, right? That's just how it goes. People get so excited telling their stories, and you're giving them such a fantastic platform, and you're making it all about them that sometimes they can keep talking for a long time. So you're letting them know up front that when you hear this question, this is the end of the podcast. Okay? We're not going to go 20 more questions after this. Wrap it up. And you're doing it in a very polite way, and you're preparing them to hear it. And then when you get into it and you're like, wow, this is really going over. I really have to wrap this up. You simply say, you know what? Listen, I have one more question for you, and here it is. Boom. And they're prepared. They don't feel like you just sandbagged them. They don't feel like you cut them off because they know that question's coming. Folks, it's a great way to round things out and keep control of your podcast. Okay? Give that a shot. I think that you will be happy with it. So you explain your process. You talk all about how you do everything. The way that I end it then too, after I've said everything that I've just said to you, As I say, then what we're going to do after that question is, we're going to end it. I'm going to thank you for being on. And then I'm going to do my quick, 2 or 3 lines to close, whatever my closing is. Then I'm going to stop recording. And then we'll have a minute to chat, talk about next steps, publication dates, things like that. What I've just let them know is, hey, when I do my sign off, don't hang up because I still want to talk to you about a couple of things. I can't tell you how many times I've had people go, okay, all right, great. And as soon as I say, until next time, or I say, keep sailing, click, they're gone. They hang up too. They figure, well, we're done with the podcast. And then I've just lost the opportunity to close with them, to establish more rapport with them, to talk about when it might be coming out, to talk about where we're getting the social media links and everything else. Okay. I did miss one thing, so I want to go back to it. I just remembered it. When you're talking about your contact information, all the way back at the beginning of this, and I apologize for this being disjointed, but I just wanted to get this out to you guys as quickly as possible. When you're talking about your social media, talking about your contact information, and you're talking about social media links and things like that, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to say, how can I get you the links to share them in the best way possible? Would you like me to email them, or should I send them to your social media to make it easier for you to share? I say that just about every time when I'm talking about, what contact information do you want to put out there? I'll say, what contact information do we want to put out to the listeners? And then I'll follow it with, and hey, how would you like me to get you the links? Now, two things have happened there. I've gotten the information, so I know how they'd prefer to receive them, but I've also put out the expectation that I have as a podcaster that I'm giving you this free platform. I'm giving you this marketing piece. All I ask is that you use it. All I ask is that you share it and you put this podcast episode out to your base of friends and family and contacts and followers. You've already set the expectation that you expect them to share it by saying, how can I get this to you for you to share it easily? Okay. So I'm sorry that had to be a little go back, but we're moving fast because I want to make sure this is short and, something you can consume quickly. Thank them, give them an idea of when, double check the contact info one last time. And again, if you didn't talk about sharing, you can talk about it now. And then, set things up. Make sure you send them the links. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to podcasters and said, did you send the links to your guest? And they go, oh, I forgot to do that. Well, they can just get the link off Spotify. Yeah, they can. They can go to Spotify. They can go to YouTube. They can get the link themselves. Or you can get the link and you can send it right to them so that all they have to do is copy, paste, post. Why ask your guest to do more work when you know that the more work you have to do, the lower the chances are that they're actually going to do it? Send them the links. Seems like a real simple thing. Make sure you do that. Okay. It's amazing how many times we don't. So the post interview is really important. It's your last chance to talk to them. It's your last chance to thank them. If you have other projects that you can include them in, I have multiple podcasts. Sometimes I invite people to be on the other podcast. If you're talking about books, you can say, "Hey, I'd really love to read the book. Thanks for the link. I'll definitely let you know how it goes." If it's about a course, you can talk about, hey, make sure you send me the link for this, or if you have a discount code, make sure you send that over. There's all sorts of things you do in the post interview. So that makes it very, very important that you keep them on the line. Okay. That's the whole set them up ahead of time for this is how we're going to end. I'm going to stop recording. Then we're going to chat. So they know to stay on the line, even when you're done, because then you get that couple of minutes with them at the end where you can close the deal and you can, set things up for future interactions. And at the very least, figure out how you can follow them on social media and invite them to follow you. A lot of people don't do that either. I look at folks who have interviewed people and I'm like, so are they following you on social media? And you look and no, they're not. Well, are you following them on social media? And you look and no, you're not. If you have someone come on as a guest, go follow them. You have to lead the way on these things. You're the podcaster. You're the one who wants to have your links shared. And you're the one who wants to, try and get their audience hearing about you. It's one of the reasons why we have people on the show is to increase our listenership. And if I reach out right after the podcast and I follow them, it's a fantastic way to let them know, hey, I'm still here. Podcast is over, but I'm still here. And I'm trying to, establish this relationship and I'm going to be watching if you share it or not. Once they know you're following them, then, it's a little conspicuous if they don't share the link because they know you're following their social media. And I know these are sound like stupid little things, but folks, they're huge in the real world. And it takes 2 seconds to do half these things. Do these simple little things. Work your pre-interview for the important time that it really is. Use your post-interview to close, to secure things, to further the relationship. And if you do that, you're going to get a lot more in return. You're going to have a lot more shares. You're going to grow faster and you're going to build better relationships. And in the end, that's one of the things that really is why a lot of us are doing podcasting is for the relationships. I hope this helped a little bit. Sorry if it was a little disjointed. Like I said, I'm trying to get it out to you quickly. I love you guys. I love doing this, and I love this group, and I love this podcast. So I hope that you guys get a little bit out of it. I would love to hear your comments back. Just remember that this is the podcast that is about podcasters. It's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. This really is the place where the rising tide raises all ships, folks. So keep sailing.